Hey, what is up, my tubers? So, this is my BAVSARGRA deck profile post, the new 50 card main deck format. And honestly, man, like, shout outs to W Slasher, because after playing his Thegria list, it really got me motivated to, like, man, like, what deck can I just, like, kind of, not like break, but like develop some nuance into that, like, no one's really, like, appreciating, or no one's, like, really using right now. Because, man, like, no one's playing this deck, bro. Like, at least in my area, no one's even touched this deck in, like, a couple sets. So, yeah, and man, the results were so surprising, guys. But let's go on and get into the deck profile. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you do want to see said results, or, like, my gameplay theory on this deck, you can check out the match videos, which should already be posted on the channel. But I'm we're gonna get onto the bread and butter of the deck, which is the arms cards. So we play believe it or not, we play all of them in this deck, and it actually works very cohesively, just because of the fact that, like, you can max out on all your key consistency pieces, and, like, it literally feels like, because of 50 card format, you have space for everything now. 2 copies of Spear. Now, Spear is very searchable in this deck now off of your 2 different Seal Dragon grade 2s, but you still want to run 2 copies of it because it's one of the more important, one of your more important arms cards. At least in terms of your right arms, and the same, like, as we continue, same's going to be said for another card, and then we're playing 1 Hammer. The reason that we're playing 1 Hammer is because Hammer is spot removal for the back row, and it's also excellent setup to just buy back another right arm from your drop zone to your hand for your next turn. Like, basically, it's like it's like back row spot removal plus follow up. So that's my reasoning for running 1 Hammer, and you just have the space for it now, and the 1-of doesn't feel bad because you can literally, like, search this from the deck, add this from the deck, and, like, buy it back from the drop zone. 1 Sword. So believe it or not, there are some niche combos that you can do with this deck now, and because of certain I guess it's still considered engine because they're about the BAVSARGRA support cards. Because of certain support cards that we're playing right now, you do want to play the arm, and you also do want to play the gun to just get the max value out of your cards. But believe it or not, we've popped this bad boy and dealt damage to our opponents, and it's just really deadly on top of checking a critical trigger on one of your fat rear guards. And then getting on to our left arms, we're playing 2 copies of the Axe. Now, the Axe is another key arms piece that you do want to run at 2, even though it is very searchable in this version of the deck. But again, it's a very key arms piece, so you do want to play it as a 2-of instead of just like one of your singleton spots. 1 Shield. Shield is just Mando. It's just really good protection, and it works really well buying it back at the end of your turn with the Axe. And then, like I was telling you guys, 1 Gun. Because of certain support cards we're running, we can just, like, lower the cost of the gun to whereas it's feasible that you can activate this set effect. But getting on to the unit cards of the deck, playing 3 copies of Persona Ride. This is a kind of a Persona Ride heavy deck, at least in terms of, like, it's the easiest way for you to regrowth your soul. If you can't Persona Ride, it's a little bit harder to regrowth your soul, because this deck just, like, uses its soul so much, even outside of the Soul Blast 2 to give her a crit and wipe the front row ability. But yeah, you really do want Persona Rides in this deck list. And then, I apologize for the names, guys. These names are really weird, and I'm bad with names in general. And I can't just call these guys Blue Dragons, because they're both Blue Dragons. But 4 copies of Seal Dragon Kanshanti. Kanshanti is what lets you hard search any arms card from your deck, as long as you have a Vanguard. And then you do a lot of rearming So what you can also do if you have spare counterblast is eat one of your arms to soul off of Kanshanti to get a fresh draw, which like just like lets you basically like fulfill your resources to the maximum. So you definitely want to run 4 copies of Kanshanti. He's essentially 4 more extra copies of all your arms cards. And then 4 copies of Sealed Blaze Dragon Distivia. Distivia is like, you can play Distivia on turn 2 versus Kanshanti requires a BAV Vanguard, so you kind of just like have to play Texas Hold'em with him. But Distivia can be played on turn 2 because it doesn't require a BAV Vanguard. And it's a top 7 search for one unit card with the dress boost ability, and then 1 arms card, and then you add 1 to hand, and then you mill the other one to drop zone. Now, it's kind of like, you know, you run quite a few more arms than you've used to in the past. But it's kind of like, more often than not, I'm just like adding 1. Like, if you get 2, you feel like you really got the value off of this card. But more often than not, I'm just adding 1 off of its effect. And it's also a very handy 20k beater by itself if you're double armed up. And your opponent's, if it's attacking a grade 3 or greater unit. But these are your consistency pieces. Again, you can just consider both of these cards 4 more extra copies of your arms cards. Distivia, you can consider extra copies of your Trick Moons and your Veilords, which we're going to go over those right now. Like, the bread and, like, again, another part of the deck, which was, like, it was one of those things where, like, BAV suffered from having too many bricks in the past, because you can brick on not having both arms, or you can brick on just like not having your moons. Distivia and Kanshanti just make it so that that just doesn't happen as often. Like, these 2 cards being able to be played at max copies make your deck very consistent overall. But yeah, 4 copies of Moon, it's just like a required engine piece and a fat booster. And then 4 copies of Veilord. Now, Veilord is a little bit tricky to use. There are some certain scenarios where, like, especially if you go first, that it's okay to just commit the Veilord and not use its effect when it is overdressed. To just hard commit it to get the static effect when it boosts. But there's other times where, like, I hold the Veilord in hand because I'm still going to have a big booster off of the Trick Moon, and I hold the Veilord in hand as follow-up for my next turn. But yeah, 4 copies of Veilord, it's just like another key engine piece that not only is this deck very consistent in finding both your arms, it's also very, at least in my personal opinion, it does require like a couple cards, like at least 1 or 2 cards, but it's also very consistent in being able to rearm every turn. Like, there's hardly a turn where I don't, like, when I was playing this deck, there was hardly a turn where I wasn't arming again on the next turn, or I didn't have a way to arm again on the next turn. And getting on to our last of the engine pieces, we're playing 2 copies of Sealbreak Dragon. Now, Sealbreak Dragon, the main reason why you're playing Sealbreak Dragon is because it goes to Soul, and you're a very heavy Soul deck. Kanshanti costs Soul, Distivia costs Soul, your Vanguard's effect costs a Soul Blast 2, some of your arms cards cost Soul, so having this just be able to refund your Soul, even if you're just calling it from drop to refund your Soul, is very crucial. And it's also crucial on the fact that your deck is very Counterblast heavy, and it can turn the guns Counterblast 2 into a Counterblast 1. It can turn the swords Counterblast 2 into a Counterblast 1 on top of feeding your Soul. So that's my personal reason for playing 2 of this card. Didn't really play it in the past. It was basically considered, at least by the BAV players that I've known and talked to, it was basically considered like just like a very like bad and terrible card. But you have so much consistency in this deck now that basically like it kind of like works like Infinite Blade works. Like, you like almost always have whatever arm you want for like whatever said situation. And then this is like a non-engine piece, but man, this is like one of the best non-engine pieces you can play in this deck. And technically it's the only non-engine piece outside of the perfect cards and the triggers. You're playing 1 copy of the Carbuncle Cat for for Dragon Empire, and the best way that I found to use this cat for this deck, because if you just superior call it, if you call it from hand, it's hard to remove off board without your opponent's help or without calling on top of it. But there's a very easy way, because BAV doesn't require its ride line cards in rotation. There's a very easy way that you could just guard with this card, resolve its effect, so it's a 20k shield, let it go to drop, and then next turn arm up your Vanguard, and then recast it to board, proc its effect to be able to draw, and like essentially you've gotten like the full value out of this card, and you're only playing it at 1. So this card is just like very like good with what BAV inherently wants to do. Getting on to the perfect guards. 1 Blitz PG and then 3 DPGs. You have grade 4 decks and decks that gain triple drive in the format currently. So it's just kind of like a necessary evil right now. And then moving on to triggers. 1 of the Dragon Empire OT. There's really not much to say here. This was one of the first decks for Dragon Empire that came out that made this OT scary to check. And then 3 draw triggers. This deck really doesn't draw much. It searches a lot, and you're able to like refund a lot of your discard costs, but it doesn't really draw much. So the draw triggers are still key and crucial to this deck's strategy. 4 Into Soul crits. The Into Soul crits are mainly here just in case if you don't have a good grade 1 target to call off, you can at least call off an Into Soul crit and get basically a free soul charge off of your Vanguard's ability when you do arm it. 4 vanilla crits and 4 vanilla heals. So yeah, again, this is another deck that I reviewed in my Rogue Warriors tier list, and I'm actually kind of enjoying being wrong on these deck lists that I rated them very low, and honestly I would bump BAVSARGRA up to it takes a really good pilot, because a really good pilot can just milk so much mileage out of this deck. Like if we ever enter into a slower format, whereas like it's more grindy instead of like riding up and trying to like punch your opponent before they punch you, I think that's the type of format where this type of deck will shine, just because it's very good at keeping tempo, and it's very good at managing its resources if you know how to play it. But anyways, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought about the deck list down below in the comments. And yeah, I'm going to be doing more content like this in the future, so, stay tuned.